All right, listeners, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into one of the most influential works on strategy ever written.
The Art of War.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring this ancient text, not just as a military manual,
Oh, definitely not.
but as a guide to navigating any kind of competition.
That's what makes it so timeless.
We've got the actual text itself, of course.
Yeah.
But we're also going to be looking at some historical battles and even some modern-day analysis to see how these ideas play out in the real world.
It's amazing how relevant it still is, even outside of the battlefield.
For sure. It's almost like a cheat code for understanding
Didn't flag out
competition. Business leaders, athletes, even politicians find valuable insights in it.
I know a lot of our listeners are probably already familiar with the Art of War.
At least in name, yeah.
But today we're going beyond the surface level. What really stands out to you about Sun Tzu's approach?
One of the most fascinating things is how he lays out these 5 fundamental factors that govern warfare.
5.
5, yeah. The moral law, heaven, earth, the commander. Okay, I'm already intrigued.
And method and discipline.
He doesn't just like list them out though,
Wait,
right?
wait,
And she actually
no. He dives into how they interact
Okay.
and sometimes even clash.
Oh.
It's like a recipe with very specific ingredients. You have to have the right balance.
Okay, so we've got heaven as a factor.
Yeah.
What does that even mean? Like sometimes even the best laid plans are at the mercy of the weather.
Exactly. He recognizes the power of forces beyond our control,
Right.
weather, terrain, but he also emphasizes that a skilled commander adapts to these challenges.
Uses them to their advantage.
For possible.
Military tactics are like unto water,
There you go.
flowing around obstacles, finding the path of least
It's
resistance,
not about brute force,
but it's more about
using the environment, even the unpredictable parts,
to your advantage.
to your advantage.
So that ties into another factor, the commander.
Yes,
Sun Tzu places a huge emphasis on leadership qualities.
absolutely. Not just about giving orders.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
He talks about 5 virtues a leader needs:
Oh, yeah.
wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness,
Oh, that's a tall order.
especially in the heat of battle.
Right. Exactly. That's why he stresses knowing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
A commander needs to understand their own strengths and weaknesses
Right.
to lead effectively.
So if you as a leader know that you are prone to rash decisions,
Yeah.
you need to find a way to compensate for that.
Exactly. Surround yourself with advisors who are more cautious, perhaps.
It's like building a team
Exactly.
where everyone's strengths complement each other.
Exactly.
You know, for someone who's writing about war,
Mm-hmm.
he spends a lot of time on the human element
That's one of the things that makes this work so timeless.
and on morality even,
Absolutely. He doesn't shy away from the ethical complexities of conflict.
at all.
He provides practical advice, sure, on
Yeah.
strategy, on tactics,
Clear.
but he acknowledges the moral dilemmas inherent in warfare.
Yeah. And we have some pretty contrasting viewpoints from our sources as well.
Absolutely.
We've got W.E.H. Leckie, who argues that war is inherently deceptive
Mm-hmm.
and destructive,
Yeah.
and that it pushes people to act in ways they wouldn't normally.
Leckie brings up a good point
Mm-hmm.
about the psychological impact of war.
Yeah,
It forces individuals into extreme situations.
for sure.
And they have to make these really difficult choices that
Mhm.
often challenge their own morals, their personal morals.
And then on the flip side, you've got someone like Theodore Roosevelt,
Oh, yeah.
who saw war as like a crucible
A test.
that strengthens nations and individuals.
Roosevelt's perspective is definitely controversial,
Oh, yeah,
but it highlights the complex relationship
for sure.
between conflict
Mm-hmm.
and societal evolution.
Yeah.
It raises questions about the role of struggle in shaping individuals and societies.
It's like that classic nature versus nurture debate,
Right.
but on a much grander scale.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how the art of war prompts these deeper discussions.
Definitely. And even John Milton in Paradise Lost depicts war as driven by these powerful emotions,
Yes.
like unconquerable will
Yes.
and immortal hate.
Powerful emotions.
It reminds us that conflict isn't just about the strategy and the tactics.
No.
It's also deeply rooted in these...
Human passions.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we've got these intense emotions fueling conflict.
Yeah.
But how do we actually define what war is? Is it just any kind of violence?
That's a great question.
Is every bar fight a war?
That's where Karl von Clausewitz comes in
Okay.
with his work on war.
Okay.
Now, he makes a crucial distinction between strategy and tactics,
Okay.
but he also emphasizes the need for a clear definition of war itself.
So it's not just random acts of violence.
Right.
What does Clausewitz say makes war war?
He argues that true war requires a specific objective,
Okay.
usually conquest,
Okay.
and the involvement of organized forces.
Okay.
So think of it this way. A bar fight, as chaotic as it might be, as violent as it might be, isn't war.
In the Clausewitzian sense.
Exactly.
Because it lacks that
Organized structure and that defined political objective.
So there's a clear line between just plain fighting and strategic warfare.
Exactly. And Sun Tzu picks up on that thread, too.
He does.
One of the most intriguing ideas he presents is this concept of winning without fighting.
Wait, winning without fighting.
It's what he calls attack by stratagem.
How is that even possible?
This is where the art of war gets really interesting.
I'm ready.
Think of it like a game of chess,
Okay.
where you outmaneuver your opponent,
Okay.
you force them to make mistakes until they're defeated without a single piece being captured.
Now that's a strategy I can get behind.
It's about outsmarting your opponent,
Oh, yeah.
finding those pressure points.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's say you have a company facing a tough competitor.
Okay.
Instead of going head-to-head in a costly price war, they decide to create a new market category altogether.
Interesting.
They're essentially changing the game, disrupting the existing landscape, and achieving their goals without engaging in direct conflict.
That's brilliant. It's like judo.
Exactly.
Using your opponent's strength against them.
Absolutely.
But Sun Tzu also talks about knowing when to fight too, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
He provides these guidelines for assessing the situation and choosing your battles wisely.
He famously says,
It does.
if our forces are 10 to the enemy's 1 to surround him, if 5 to 1 to attack him, if twice as numerous to divide our army into 2.
Yeah, it's all about analyzing the situation.
Picking your battles.
Picking your battles, knowing when to act and when to hold back.
And sometimes waiting for that perfect opportunity.
Absolutely. Patience is a key element of his strategic thinking.
Patience.
But he also emphasizes the importance of speed and deception when the time is right.
Right. Rapidity being the essence of war.
Yes.
And then he talks about the need to be subtle.
Exactly.
It's a fascinating balance between patience and decisive action.
And that's where his ideas about espionage come in.
Go.
Sun Tzu saw spies as crucial for gathering information,
Hmm.
spreading disinformation,
Okay.
and disrupting the enemy's plans.
So knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
And the advantage that you can gain from it.
Spies, now that's getting into some cloak and dagger territory.
It is.
Espionage was a part of warfare.
Back then.
Oh, yeah. And he dedicates a significant portion of the art of war to explaining the different types of spies
Okay.
and how to utilize them effectively.
Gotcha.
He even calls it divine manipulation of the threads.
Wow.
It's about weaving this web of information,
Right.
controlling the narrative, influencing the outcome.
Think back to General Crook
Yes.
and his use of Native American scouts against the Apaches.
Perfect example.
So he wasn't trying to overpower them with brute force.
No.
He was adapting his strategy, using their own expertise against them.
A classic example of Sun Tzu's principles in action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best move isn't to attack head on, right? You got to know when to sort of pull back.
Yeah.
Sun Tzu talks about this idea of deviation.
That's right. Deviation is all about luring the enemy away from their intended target,
Okay.
creating a diversion and then achieving your objective while they're off balance.
So it's like a feint in boxing.
Exactly.
You're making your opponent think you're going one way,
Yes.
but then
You're going the other way.
you deliver the knockout blow from another direction.
Exactly. You're essentially outmaneuvering them,
Oh,
using their own momentum against them.
do you have any historical examples of this?
Well, Sun Pin, the descendant of Sun Tzu,
Right.
provides a classic example.
Okay.
He used the chief state's reputation for cowardice to his advantage.
Oh, wow.
By pretending to retreat, he lured his enemy, Pang Chuan, into a carefully laid trap,
Oh, wow.
leading to a decisive victory.
That's playing the long game,
That is
using deception to achieve.
a strategic advantage.
Yeah, it's almost like psychological warfare.
It is.
You're playing on your opponent's expectations
Yes.
and their biases.
Absolutely. A prime example of how Sun Tzu blends strategic thinking with a deep understanding of human psychology.
Right.
But remember, even the most brilliant strategies are useless without effective leadership
Yeah.
and a well-trained army.
We've been talking a lot about the grand strategies,
Yeah,
but it all comes down to the people on the ground carrying out the plan.
absolutely.
So what does Sun Tzu say about leadership? What makes a truly effective commander?
He paints a very clear picture.
Okay.
When the general is weak and without authority, when his orders are not clear and distinct, when there are no fixed duties assigned to officers and men, and the ranks are formed in a slovenly, haphazard manner, The result is utter disorganization.
So it's not just about being tough or giving orders.
No.
It's about clarity, structure,
Purpose.
creating a sense of purpose.
Exactly. He also highlights the importance of discipline
Okay.
in training.
Mhm.
He famously writes, if in training soldiers commands are habitually enforced, the army will be well disciplined. If not, its discipline will be bad.
So it's about establishing a culture
Yeah.
of obedience
And precision.
where everyone knows their role and executes it flawlessly.
Exactly. It's not so different from a well-run business
Or even a sports team.
or even a sports team.
It's about creating a team
Mhm.
where everyone's on the same page, working towards that common goal.
Exactly. And speaking of discipline,
Oh, yeah?
there's that fascinating story of Chow Chow,
Yes.
the general who condemned himself to death,
Oh, later.
commuted to cutting off his hair.
For allowing his horse to damage a farmer's crops.
Yeah, it demonstrates his unwavering commitment to upholding the law
Wow.
and setting an example for his troops.
Powerful.
Actions speak louder than words.
They do.
Leading by example can be far more effective than just giving orders.
Right, and that ties back into that all-important moral law that Sun Tzu emphasizes
Absolutely.
throughout The Art of War. It's
Yeah.
about building trust
And unity.
between the leader and the people.
When soldiers believe in their commander and trust that he will lead them fairly and justly, they'll be far more willing to follow him into battle.
It's about creating a sense of shared purpose,
Yes.
a belief in the mission,
Yes.
and confidence in the leadership.
Exactly. And these principles aren't just applicable to armies.
Right.
Think about any successful organization, whether it's a business, a sports team,
Even a family?
even a family. These same elements of trust, discipline, and strong leadership are essential for success.
It's amazing how these ideas from this ancient text
No.
can still be so relevant today.
It is.
But Sun Tzu also cautions against arrogance and underestimating your opponent, right?
He does. He constantly stresses staying vigilant, adapting to changing circumstances, and never assuming victory is guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reminder that even the best laid plans can go awry, and the battlefield is a constantly shifting landscape.
That's a valuable lesson, especially in today's world, where the pace of change is
Faster than ever.
faster than ever.
Mm.
So how do we apply this wisdom to the complexities of modern conflict,
Yeah.
where the lines between war and peace are often blurred?
That's a great question. And it leads us to a crucial concept that Sun Tzu himself grapples with.
Which is,
Knowing the enemy is vital, but in an age of global interconnectedness and constantly shifting alliances, who is the enemy?
ooh, that's a question we're going to need to unpack.
Yes.
It seems that even as the world changes,
Yeah.
the fundamental questions about conflict strategy
And the nature of war itself.
remain remarkably constant.
Absolutely.
So we've been talking about knowing your enemy,
Right,
and
yeah.
knowing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Sun Tzu also emphasizes the importance of knowing the battlefield itself, doesn't he?
He does. Terrain plays a crucial role in
Right.
his strategic thinking. He even compares a well-positioned army to a grindstone crushing an egg.
That's a pretty vivid image.
It is.
What's he getting at with that?
It's all about leverage,
Okay.
understanding weak points and strong, as Sun Tzu puts it.
So it's not always about brute force.
No, it's about positioning. It's about positioning yourself where you have the advantage.
Right.
You, as the listener, might even think of it in terms of a business negotiation.
Oh, okay.
Going in with the knowledge of what the other side truly needs. That's choosing your terrain.
It's like picking the right battlefield where the natural features work in your favor.
Exactly.
But how do you actually go about acquiring that knowledge?
That's where Sun Tzu's fascination with spies comes back into play.
Of course.
He was a big believer in good intelligence.
Yeah.
Remember how we categorized spies into 5 types?
5 types, yeah. Local, inward, converted, doomed, and surviving.
Exactly. And each type has its own specific role
Right.
in gathering information and manipulating the enemy.
It's like having eyes and ears everywhere.
Yes.
You get a glimpse into your opponent's minds.
Exactly. Sun Tzu had a brilliant term for it. Divine manipulation of the threads.
Oh.
It's about weaving a web of information that gives you a decisive advantage. Think back to General Crook and his use of Native American scouts against the Apaches.
Mm-hmm.
That's a perfect example of using local knowledge to gain an edge.
It's fascinating how these ancient strategies still resonate today.
They do.
But sometimes the best move isn't to attack head-on, is it?
Right.
Sun Tzu also talks about this idea of deviation.
Yes, he does.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more.
Deviation is all about luring the enemy away from their intended target,
Okay.
creating a diversion,
Okay.
and then achieving your objective while they're off balance.
Okay, so you're essentially outmaneuvering them, using their own momentum against them.
Precisely. Think of it like a feint in boxing,
Oh,
making your opponent think you're going one way while you deliver the knockout blow from another direction.
that's a brilliant tactic.
It is.
Do we have any historical examples of this deviation in action?
Well, Sun Pin, the descendant of Sun-Tzu we mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
provides a classic example.
Okay.
He used the Chai state's reputation for cowardice to his advantage.
Wow, so he pretended to retreat.
He did. He lured his enemy, Pang Chuan, into a carefully laid trap,
Yeah.
leading to a decisive victory.
So he was playing the long game,
He was.
using deception to achieve a strategic advantage.
Exactly. It's almost like psychological warfare,
It is.
playing on your opponent's expectations and biases.
Exactly. It really is a prime example of how Sun Tzu blends strategic thinking with a deep understanding of human psychology.
He does.
But remember, even the most brilliant strategies are useless without effective leadership and a well-trained army.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? We've talked a lot about the grand strategies,
We have.
but it all comes down to the people on the ground carrying out the plan.
That's right. So what does Sun Tzu say about leadership?
What makes a truly effective commander?
Yeah.
He states, when the general is weak and without authority, when his orders are not clear and distinct, when there are no fixed duties assigned to officers and men, and the ranks are formed in a slovenly, haphazard manner, the result is utter disorganization.
So it's not just about being tough or giving orders, it's about
Clarity
structure.
and creating a sense of purpose.
That's right. He also highlights the importance of discipline and training. Right.
He does.
If in training soldiers commands are habitually enforced, the army will be well disciplined. If not, its discipline will be bad.
It's about establishing a culture of obedience and precision.
Where everyone knows their role and executes it flawlessly.
Exactly. It's not so different from a well-run business or even a sports team.
It really isn't. It's about creating a team where everyone's on the same page, working towards that common goal.
And speaking of discipline,
Yeah.
there's that fascinating story of Sun-Tzu,
The general who condemned himself to death,
well, later commuted to cutting off his hair.
right, for allowing his horse to damage a farmer's crops.
It demonstrates his unwavering commitment to upholding the law
Wow.
and setting an example for his troops.
Actions speak louder than words.
They do. Leading by example can be far more effective than just giving orders.
Right, and this ties back into that all-important moral law that Sun Tzu emphasizes throughout the art of war.
It does.
It's about building trust and unity between the leader and the people.
It is. When soldiers believe in their commander and trust that he will lead them fairly and justly, they'll be far more willing to follow him into battle.
Yeah, it's about creating that sense of shared purpose, a belief in the mission, and confidence in the leadership.
Exactly. And these principles aren't just applicable to armies.
Right.
Think about any successful organization, whether it's a business, a sports team, or even a family.
Yeah.
These same elements of trust, discipline, and strong leadership are essential for success.
It's amazing how these ideas from an ancient text can still be so relevant today.
It is. But Sun Tzu also cautions against arrogance and underestimating your opponent.
Right.
He constantly stresses the importance of staying vigilant, adapting to changing circumstances, and never assuming victory is guaranteed.
He does.
It's a reminder that even the best-laid plans can go awry, and the battlefield is a constantly shifting landscape.
Yeah, that's a valuable lesson, especially in today's world, where the pace of change is faster than ever. So how do we apply this wisdom to the complexities of modern conflict, where the lines between war and peace are often blurred?
That's a great question, and it leads us to a crucial concept that Sun Tzu himself grapples with.
Which is?
Knowing the enemy is vital, but in an age of global interconnectedness and constantly shifting alliances, who is the enemy?
That's a question we'll definitely need to unpack.
We will.
It seems that even as the world changes,
It does.
the fundamental questions about conflict strategy and the nature of war itself remain remarkably constant.
We do.
You know, we've spent this deep dive really getting into the mind of Sun Tzu,
We have.
the strategies, the leadership, even the morality of conflict.
Yeah.
But I keep coming back to something you said earlier
Okay.
about how the art of war is studied by CEOs and athletes.
Oh, yeah.
That's a far cry from ancient battlefields.
It is, but that's what makes Sun Tzu so fascinating.
Right.
His work transcends its historical context.
It does.
It's a timeless guide to strategy and competition.
And those principles we've been discussing, They apply whether you're facing a rival company or negotiating a tough deal.
They do. It's about understanding the dynamics of power, assessing the situation, and making calculated moves to achieve your goals.
So it's like a mental framework
It is.
for approaching any kind of challenge, not just war.
Not just war in the traditional sense.
Exactly. And importantly, it's about doing so with minimal losses, both to yourself and your opponent,
That's a really important point.
isn't it?
The art of war isn't about glorifying violence or seeking out conflict.
No.
It's about achieving victory
Right.
in the most efficient and strategic way possible.
And that's why it resonates with leaders in all sorts of fields.
Absolutely.
Imagine you're a CEO facing a competitive threat.
Okay.
What would Sun Tzu advise?
Sun-Tzu would advise you to carefully analyze your opponent's strengths and weaknesses, exploit their vulnerabilities, and position yourself for success.
It's like that attack by stratagem idea,
Exactly.
but applied to the business world.
Right. Maybe instead of launching a direct attack, you innovate, create a new market, or forge strategic partnerships.
So you're essentially winning without engaging in a costly head-to-head battle.
Exactly. A perfect example of the adaptability of Sun Tzu's principles.
Right.
They can be applied to a vast range of situations,
Yeah.
from boardrooms to political campaigns to even personal relationships.
So whether you're trying to close a deal, win a championship, or simply navigate a difficult conversation,
The art of war offers a wealth of insight.
it really does. It's incredible how a text written over 500 years ago can still feel so relevant
I know, right?
and applicable to our lives today.
It speaks to the enduring nature of human conflict and the timeless principles that govern it.
But as we discussed earlier, the world has changed a lot since Sun Tzu's time.
It has.
Technology, globalization
And the blurring of traditional battle lines.
have created all these new challenges and complexities.
They have, which brings us back to that thought-provoking question.
Right.
Knowing the enemy is vital, but in an age of global interconnectedness and constantly shifting alliances.
Who is the enemy?
It's almost like the very definition of enemy has become more fluid.
Harder to pin down.
That's a crucial point. And it challenges us to think critically about how we apply these lessons.
Of the art of war.
In the modern world, perhaps the most valuable takeaway as we wrap up this deep dive is the emphasis on self-knowledge.
Right. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles.
It's not just about outsmarting the other side, it's about understanding your own strengths, weaknesses, and motivations.
So it's about mastering yourself before you can master any external challenge.
Exactly. And perhaps in our interconnected world, applying the wisdom of the art of war also means seeking ways to transform conflict into cooperation, to build bridges instead of battlefields.
That's a powerful thought to leave our listeners with. Can we use these strategies not just to win, but to create a more peaceful and collaborative world? It's a question worth pondering.
Indeed. And it's a testament to the enduring legacy of Sun-Tzu that his work continues to spark these kinds of thoughtful discussions centuries after it was written.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the timeless wisdom of the art of war. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and maybe even a new perspective on how to approach the challenges in your own life.